Welcome to Rafael at Home, everybody. We hope you're out there. And I'm Joni Cooper. I'm the Director of Programming for DocLands Documentary Film Festival here at CFI. And I'm delighted to have Alexandra Lexton here with me, Director of The Lure of This Land. The Lure of This Land will be here on Rafael at Home until at least next Thursday. So if you haven't seen it yet, take a look. It's really worth seeing. Thanks so much for coming and being here with us,
Indeed.
Alex.
Indeed.
Especially taking time on this long weekend, our first long weekend during the coronavirus, which I hope it will be our last.
It's all been a long weekend.
That's true.
Of a fashion, not quite as much celebration as many long weekends, you know.
Yeah. More people staying at home.
Yes, seemingly.
As a local Bay Area filmmaker, Alex is not a stranger to CFI or to Mill Valley. In fact, she screened a film here called Digger back in about 1994, I believe. And that was screened at the Mill Valley Film Festival, and it's a narrative film with Olympia Dukakis and Leslie Nielsen, correct?
Yeah. And the young Joshua Jackson, if anybody knows who he is, he's somewhat known now.
Right.
He was 12.
Yeah. Is The Lure of the Land your first documentary?
Yes, yeah. Actually, when I had graduated from college in the Pacific Northwest, I lived for a time in Seattle, and I worked for the PBS news station there on an internship. And we did kind of a news magazine where I learned how to do a lot of different things, pre-interview, potential interviews, and log tape, and go on location to assist the producer and all that. So that was kind of my foray, but I then got into making narrative features, which was more my interest and desire.
You've also got a background in creative writing, is that right?
Yeah. I have a master's degree in creative writing. Yeah.
So that was probably a draw for those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I went to Belize to teach a course on creative writing to the fourth form, which is the senior year, and also the junior college students. I constructed a course called Tell Your Story, and I went down to work with them. And while I was there, I kept meeting all these people and thinking, oh, their stories are so great. And I mean, actually, I didn't really get them. There were 2 or 3 main people that refused to be interviewed.
Oh.
And that was really a disappointment. But along the way, I found these other fantastically interesting people, Richard and Carol, and Sharon Matola, and Mick and Lucy.
Yeah. That was what I was wondering is what took you to Belize in the first place, because you're talking about the lure of this land. So were you feeling a lure to Belize before you got an offer to go and work there, or was it just something that happened after?
I absolutely was, because I went with my 2 sons and my husband at the time on vacation for a week, and I was in the midst of doing my master's, and I was writing my thesis, and it was one of those places that you come to that you just feel like the muse has arrived. And I don't think it was just a timing issue, because I was on holiday with my family. It wasn't that I really had time to be sitting and writing, but I was just utterly insistent, and I'd find these little corners, and I wrote some of the work I did is in The Lure of This Land, but there's another piece I wrote called The Invisible Potu, which is another film I hope to make in this lifetime.
Right.
Yeah, but I wrote that while I was there, and then I decided I wanted to teach my teaching practicum there. So then I went back to do a scout for the places that I might teach, and I found a college in San Ignacio. And that's where I ended up doing my practicum.
Okay. Now, so was it the people you met that actually formed the theme and direction of the film, or did you have something in mind before you started meeting these compelling?
No, I didn't have anything in mind. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go find a film, or, oh, maybe this idea. It didn't really germinate until I was there 3 different times, and I kept connecting with these, really interesting people who had gone, to a foreign place and reinvented themselves, which I find really fascinating. I think this has the potential to be a series. You could take this story and this, this idea of finding these stories pretty much anywhere where people, leave their homes to try and find themselves anew. But I knew I did not want to do a film about, retirees, American retirees in Belize. So that was something I kept gravitating away from.
Right.
As I said, there were many that would have added just so much more kind of diversity of thought and perspective that, I didn't get. So.
Yeah. Well, you certainly got a great bunch. I have to say I was certainly horrified to see that Richard Foster was killed. And so I'm so sorry for you and for the whole community there.
Yeah.
Is Carol still there? Do you know?
She just recently went back, actually. And so she's there now, back on their little kind of compound that they have. And we haven't had a conversation. I understand from friends that she's had a hard time with MS, that dealing with that on her own. Richard was a huge support to her. And but he was murdered while we were in post-production doing our edit. And for quite a bit of time, I contemplated leaving that out of the story. Now I can't believe I even thought about leaving it out of the story, but it changes, the whole experience of viewing the film in a way.
Yeah.
But it was pretty much finished when I found out.
Yeah.
I mean, not completely, but just in terms of the tone.
Yeah.
So, but that is obviously a facet of life, and life in a semi-third world country. So,
Well, life anywhere, really.
yeah.
And to hear him say how he how he hoped to go, and then learn it's like, okay, well, that must have been sudden, no lingering.
Yeah. In some ways, it did feel, I mean, that's part of why I really felt it strongly after a while that I needed to put it in, because he really prophesized his death in a way,
Yeah.
I mean, not as horrifying as it turned out to be, but he definitely, and he was really a gem of a man,
Very.
It's one of those moments where you think, where's the justice? And
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to the murderers yet. So that's a conversation I'm hoping to have at some point in the near future with Carol, but she's, I'm sure, still in deep mourning,
Yeah. I have to say that it really drew me in right from the start with the jungle scenes and sounds. I'm a bit of an audiophile, and just the sounds of that, I could almost smell the heat and humidity of the jungle. So that really drew me in and drew me into the story. But your characters were very compelling. And I also found it interesting to hear what Alvin from the Mennonite community had said about being fearful for the way they isolated themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they're a bit of ahead of the curve there in terms of their outlook, I think. The way it turned out anyway. Yeah.
You mean Belizeans, or you mean his community?
His community, yeah. I think he says that he was a bit fearful for whatever reason. I think just maybe not being as accepted through their isolation. But as it turns out, we're all being isolated, so they were ahead of the curve.
Tragic, but true. Yeah. It is a really unique community the country of Belize, and there are so many different cultures that coexist there. And you know, I was hoping that when I was filming that I was going to get even more of the sort of texture of the place and the people. But I realized along the way that I really, if it wasn't going to come unless I took more time or stayed longer, but I would always be a white woman in a country where I didn't necessarily fit in, you know. And so I really found my limitations, you know, as a filmmaker. I don't consider myself a reporter, but you know, if I did, it would, you know, I knew I wasn't going to get behind certain doors. I really wanted to be talking to, I always thought, well, I can talk to anybody. Well, I found out, you know what, you can't.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're not looking up to you necessarily, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And just a reminder, you can leave questions with the under the Q&A option there, folks. And we've got a question actually from Christina. She's asking, what was your technique for making people feel safe to share their stories? Hi,
Christina. I know her. One of my dear friends. I don't know if I should divulge, but well, Christina knows me. I love having conversation with people and learning their stories. I mean, it's much less interesting to hear myself talk, and there are so many people that had these adventures and these tales to tell about, you know, just leaving everything and everyone they knew to, you know, get in a car and drive to a place that, you know, they didn't know anyone. So it's just, I think that it's just really a matter of listening, you know. I think above all else in general in life.
Yeah, the listener gets the info. She also asks, the text that you speak of, was it written before, during, or after that? I think she means the text that runs along the screen.
Yeah, the little vignettes. Where I'm trying to depict the internal voice of the Voyager, as I refer to that person in as you know, which could be a universal you, myself, anyone. I had written some of it before in the Invisible Po2, which is another project, but I really mostly came up with it as we went along because. You know, I actually wanted to do a whole nother thing. I won't go into that, but you can call me later, Christina. But I knew I wanted to depict these kind of layers of experience in some way without necessarily having an actor to do it. I almost thought of having an actor or even doing, you know, some version of a character enacting what it was like. But anyway, this is what we ended up with, you know, these little, what I considered them to be semi-poetic vignettes at the end of the day.
And what I was wondering too is if you had written those questions kind of to yourself as you explored what you were feeling as well as for other people. And I think you said that it was a bit for yourself as well.
Yeah, they were a part of my experience of being down there. Those questions were a part of that, you know. You know, you think every day of the fact that your children aren't with you, you know, and you know, then there's this moment where you're just utterly immersed in the place, the smells, the sensations, and in a place like Belize, it's just teeming with life. You basically can see things growing, the smells, the sounds. And then, you know, the kind of final question, will you go home? You know, will you ever fit in? Will you go home? So those were all kind of things I think about when I travel, you know, when I come from a long line of travelers, ladies, my matriarchy I come from. And so I don't know if that answered your question, Christina.
Yeah, and the fact that you see people there, the characters who you introduce us to, who have ended up staying for so many different reasons, and such amazing reasons. I was just floored by the work that Sharon did with the zoo, and how she has brought those animals to the people of Belize and taught them so much, so that she may be single-handedly, you know, keeping species from getting extinct in that area.
Yeah, she's absolutely instrumental in that, as with Carol and Richard, because of the videos and things that they would do to educate the general public. And yeah, Sharon, what an amazing woman, what a storyteller. It was we just spent a whole day wandering the zoo with her, and her, you know, listening to her stories and meeting the animals, you know, being able to interact with them, and, you know, just to have that experience is such a blessing for me. And, you know, and she's there on a daily basis, or she was. I understand she's not well now. But she really single-handedly did indeed bring the zoo and an education about the creatures of Belize to the people of Belize.
Yeah. Ariel has a question. She's asked, did you have any opportunity to talk with members of the Hokkien Chinese community in Belize?
You know, I tried, and I had 10 days and a handful of interviews lined up, with some segments of time, very minimal, to try and find new interviews. And before I came down, I made an effort to get people to get on the phone with me and or meet with me when I got there. And 2 people just canceled at the last minute. And I couldn't kind of rearrange my schedule. Had brought Juliet Sutherland, who was the DP, came down, and she also did the sound, and she also happens to be my cousin. And she and I came down, just the 2 of us. And I didn't end up with, it was one of the you know, groups of people that I was really hoping to get interviews with. And I mean, this is a film I could have gone back, and I could have raised money and gone back and really gotten even more, you know, to it than I did. It's one of those, like, that I got what I got kind of regrets, but.
Yeah. Shara asked, was the entire film shot in those 10 days in one trip? And yeah,
hi, Shara. Shara McCallum is a fantastic poet, for those of you that don't know her. And we taught together at the Mendocino Coast Writers Workshop. And she came as a guest poet, and I was there teaching screenwriting, just FYI. Give her a Google. Let's see. It was shot in one trip in 10 days, yes. And what drew me to Belize was really the place, the texture of the smell, the people, the sounds, the sights, the animals, the juxtaposition between the jungle and the ocean, the people who live, you know, around the jungle towns, and the people who live on the ocean, the Afro-Carib culture, which is really rich there, and the different languages you hear, and also the pride and of the people, you know. And also, it was really fascinating to me to be in a culture where they were so full of pride of place, and most people had this kind of knowledge about their country, about their land, their country, and a sense of pride about it. You know, granted, I went first as a tourist, so I was getting a lot of that kind of interaction. But then when I went back the other 5 times, you know, twice before I started scouting to shoot, and then really once to scout, and then the last time to shoot the film. And I had some other thought there. And just to answer your question, Shara, is also, whenever I was there, I would take pictures. Just, it's something that I do. Just, it's kind of like people who are fascinated by, you know, capturing an image. I'm one of those. And so, you know, I would go out horseback riding deep into the jungle with one guide. He became a friend. He would take me way out into the jungle, places that most people don't get to go. And I always had my camera. And I wasn't thinking then, well, I'm going to make a movie out of this, but I used everything. Yeah.
Not anything wasted.
Yeah.
Excellent. Janice wants to know what your biggest challenge making a film in another country was.
Hi, Janice. Janice Plotkin. She's a good friend too, and a long time associate and director of programming for the Mill Valley Film Festival. Did I say I probably got that title a little askew, but she was one of the directors of programming. So, Janice, I haven't personally gone back with the film. I really want to. And am talking to people about that possibility, but it was in the Belize International Film Festival in November and had a really great turnout and a wonderful response. It got honorable mention for Best Documentary. They only chose, I think, like 6 or 8 documentaries out of hundreds, and this was one of them. So I was honored to be chosen, but it's truly a story for Belize, about Belize, right?
Yeah. What was your biggest challenge in making that in Belize, doing the whole project there?
People flaking out. You know, once you got yourself there, you've got your hotel, you've paid for, you know, your mini crew to come down. The heat, I'd say, was another one. And also not being able to access what I really wanted to access. I mean, I really didn't think I had a story once I left, honestly. I thought, I mean, you know, I kept thinking we were going to have these kind of aha, cathartic, oh, I went to Belize because my family was, you know, had all died, or, you know, something that was just kind of like these cathartic stories. It was kind of like, I got a lot of, oh yeah, we just ended up here. And I kept thinking, oh my God, really? But then once, you know, we fleshed out, and it was the editors that helped flesh this out. In particular, Linda Peckham, who's just a phenomenal, multi-talented human being and a fantastic editor. And she really brought it to life in so many ways. You know, when I thought there were so many times I thought, and there were also some emotional things attached to this story. So there was a time or two where I thought, I'm not finishing this. I am not finishing this, but hallelujah.
Yeah, that's one of the other things that I really loved about the film, because I love the way music can really play a part. And some of your musical segues and how you brought that in were just fabulous. Did you discover the music while you were there? And there were some local musicians playing.
Oh yeah, it's predominantly local music, and in fact, I'm working with Stone Tree Music right now. We're going to have a link on my website where you can download the music. And so there are, I think, about 7 Belizean songs. And when I was there, and I mean, probably like a lot of people who travel often, I'm often searching for music of the place that I'm visiting and making that my personal soundtrack. And when I found these fantastic, you know, compilations and musicians, I played them for my kids, you know, were like, do we have to listen to Belizean music again, you know? So they were my own soundtrack for quite a while, and they just became a natural part of the film. So
yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely natural. And it just fits so well with the surroundings and the characters. Yeah.
And a huge part of Belizean culture is just their fantastic music. So if you're really interested in it, you can just go to thelureofthisland.com and or lexproductions.net. And you'll see there'll be, in the next week, there'll be a link, and follow us. You know, this is part of the routine now as a filmmaker.
We have another question. How do you handle retakes when doing a documentary? Do you do retakes?
You can. I didn't. Yeah, there was just not a necessity. I mean, I had 40 hours of material. So, I mean, if you can't make something, you know, out of 40 hours, you shouldn't be making films.
Gosh. I also know that you've had your hand in creating the Pacific Filmmakers Forum. I mean, the Bay Area is such a hotbed of documentary filmmakers. But I assume that this isn't just for documentary filmmakers, but filmmakers in general in the Bay Area. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. When I moved back here 8 years ago, I kept trying to find local filmmaking community, which is part of why I got involved through Janice Plotkin, who I met at the Squaw Valley Screenwriters Program. She came up to speak, and I said, you know, I would love to get reaffiliated with the Mill Valley Film Festival. She said, oh, I'll set you up with the right people. And indeed she did. And so I did end up meeting filmmakers through the Mill Valley Film Festival. This is pre-DocLands, and I'm predominantly, I would say, I mean, I'm doing both obviously now. I have another film that I'm developing that's a doc, but I'm predominantly a narrative feature person. I've never done a short. I don't know that I will, but so look how I deviated from your question. What the heck was the question?
how you started this organization, why you started it. Do you feel that you're meeting your objectives?
I was lonely for filmmakers, and I found that they were like all women, all this, all that, and I wanted filmmakers, everybody, you know, men, women, whatever, and so, but also people who had made films, you know, I found myself in groups often where I was doing a lot of teaching, and I really wanted some peers to have a conversation with and to network and potentially make films together and to brainstorm. And I actually wanted to be affiliated, Pacific Filmmakers Forum, to be affiliated with one of the local film festivals where we would do potentially like a day's worth of workshops for local filmmakers, bring in Canadian producers, Latin American, and see how we could make things happen. But, you know, I can't be a filmmaker and do all that. And so what it is now is we gather usually like once every 3 months, and we talk about our projects, see how we can help each other. I'm trying to get something together, which is going to be like a filmmaker retreat, where we can work on our projects together, you know, in a more condensed, you know, 2-week kind of. So I'm working on that with, you know, sort of a smattering of people. So it is still going, and, you know, there's about 30 people that I tapped into, and there are anywhere from 10 to 15 of us that are kind of show up regularly.
Fantastic. No, it's such a great idea. Communities are needed.
Yeah.
A question from somebody is, love the line, risk for a time getting lost. Really love the introductions to the next section.
Thinking about that. Let's see. It came to believe into or live there to learn to risk for a time getting lost. I can't remember what the exact next section is, even though it's my words. You type them to me, please, so I can answer your question a little bit better.
Yeah.
Anonymous person. Was it an anonymous person? Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a question, have you brought this film back to Belize to share? And I did answer that question. If you weren't tuned in, this person's asking, Janice Plotkin asked me that. And it was, yes, it went to the Belize International Film Festival in November. And I am hoping to bring it back and have like a gathering of all the people that participated. But there's some fantastic people that participated that aren't in the film too. So there's always that.
Exactly. Yeah. Was there a reason, this question comes from Ray, was there a reason you didn't interview and devote more time in the film to the Mayan people in Belize?
I had a couple of interviews with Mayan people, and they are a huge part of the fabric. They are the fabric in many ways of original Belize. But they are even people who have left what they know, you know, to look for something new, and found this country that was way back in the beginning of time for Belize. And I mean, part of it was one of the interviews I got just wasn't a great interview. And the other was that it didn't fit really as essentially into the story of why do you leave, what are you looking for, and what do you find. I would have had to go back and make this much more in depth about the history of the country of Belize to more authentically, and organically incorporate. It could have been organically incorporated, whatever that means. The story of the Mayans. I could make another film. I'll tell you.
I was going to say that it would make a much longer film, but make another one. Heck, another reason to go back.
Yeah, I have so many others I want to make, but yeah, I like this is a very, very valid question, Mr. Rodney.
And this is not a question, it's rather a praise. Love the way each narrative led to the next section.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was an interesting process, and I felt very self-conscious doing it because so much of that really was like personal story, like diary readings, and they weren't diaries. I don't keep a diary, but I should anyway. But that at the end of the day, once I like put myself out there, and my editor kept saying, Linda, is it Hallmark card time? And we're like, people gonna go, she kept saying, no, it works, and she was right. And I love those vignettes now, thank God. I really do. I really love the one where the traveler's voice is completely immersed in the place, because that's ultimately why I go anywhere. It's like to be just utterly, embedded, consumed by the place that I'm visiting. Yeah.
Take on the culture, everything.
Yeah.
I also wanted to thank you for sharing the trailer for your upcoming film with us, Flower Child. I found it a really great trailer. And I have to ask, is it at all biographical?
I think you know the answer to that. I mean, we haven't actually talked about that, but I'm just curious. I just want to know what you think. Do you think it's autobiographical? What do you think?
I think there's probably a hint in there.
Yes, yeah. It is based, I now changed it on the flowerchildthefilm.com website. Go there, people. It says based on real lives. And it is, I would say, the screenplay's finished. I'll do rewrites up to the day we shoot probably. But it is based, yeah, absolutely on this real life.
Right. And that's actually, Susan asked, can you tell us what we can expect from Flower Child? So that's pretty much what you were saying.
Oh, Susan, you know what to expect. That's also a friend. So, Sue, I mean, it is going to be a narrative feature. It's really the vignette that I made, which is this kind of teaser trailer that you guys all saw, was what I could make without actors. It's going to have sort of textures like that, it'll have music like that. I hope to have just fantastic actors. You can go to flowerchildthefilm.com and see the lookbook, which is kind of gives you more of a sense of the textures of the film that you're going to see, the place, the juxtaposition of Portugal in the mid 80s and Northern California in the late 60s, early 70s, and the histories during that time, and also the juxtaposition of these two characters, a father and a daughter who've never met each other, coming together in, for her, a foreign land, and for him also a foreign land, as he's an expat living there, and also a cripple. Anyway, there's many facets to the story, and follow us and stay tuned, because that is really one of my passion projects. Yeah.
Well, how can you go wrong shooting in Northern California and Portugal, really?
Yeah, well, the actors will have a big say too.
That's true.
I mean, it's as anybody who's ever even attempted to make a film knows, it is such a multi-layered and arduous task.
Yeah.
And coronavirus comes and your film gets disappeared from the film festival circuit. And thank God we have this opportunity to put it out in the world. It's really a great thing that you guys are setting up. I'm now gonna pimp a little for the California Film Society, which is doing this for filmmakers like myself, getting the films out there in this way where even more people can see them. So
Yes, and that's a big thing right now, and everybody's welcome to come to Rafael at Home any time of the day or night and see all kinds of great films. And thanks so much for bringing the lure of this land to us, Rafael at Home. It's
a great way you can, I mean, there's a lot of great films up there, I noticed, but you should tell everyone to see the lure of this land. Get it out in the world. I mean, it is not it's not what I would call a game changer, but it is, my intention was really to tell the stories of people that I personally found fascinating and knew that they had universal kind of appeal.
Well, thanks again, Alexandra, for joining us here tonight. And thanks everybody else for taking the time today. And also, if you haven't seen the film, you can go to Rafael at Home and screen it. So please do. Yeah.
Oh, someone answered that question. Someone asked how do we see the film? So now they know, Rafael at Home. Yeah.
Exactly. Great.
Thank you. Thank you, friends and family, for tuning in. My son's on there too.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Yeah, I didn't want it to end either, Christina. You'll have to call me. All right. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Good night.